to have you here.
You guys shouldn't be involved.
Yes. How have you been? Good.
I'd like to welcome Jim Walter, who is back visiting us today. I think you may remember him. I do. And we graduated, we crossed paths many years ago in Mount Lebanon. So thank you for being here. We're going to take about 45 minutes to take a look at the Ninth Commandment. Dave, in case you didn't remember which one it is, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And I like, I'm using two books as references, but I like how the overview is stated here in the Ten Commandments for today. And so I'm going to read it. It said, the Ninth Commandment is not about lying, whether they kind of lie or the malice-laden lie. The Bible has lots to say about lying, of course, particularly in the book of Proverbs and James. But this commandment has a particular kind of falsehood in view, public testimony before the judges or the elders on the basis of which the community's leaders can uphold justice and maintain healthy institutions. Of course, it applies to the individual speaking the truth and avoiding slander, but its focus is on the machinery by which a society deals fairly and honorably with its citizens. When the instruments of justice cannot be trusted, public confidence in government declines or disappears. The result is chaos or a reign of terror. So we're talking about the bigger picture here, in which the society is based on the ability to tell the truth. Sound familiar? Yeah. That's a brief overview of the Ninth Commandment. So,
when was that book written? Excuse me. When was that book written?
When?
Yeah, I was curious.
2006. Does this surprise you?
Not really.
Have things gotten better? I don't know. We'll see. I'm sorry. Did you have?
Who wrote it? Who's the author?
Walter J. Harrelson.
Okay.
He is a university professor of Hebrew at Wake Forest Divinity School. So, let's dive into a little bit. Again, we're talking about a bigger picture here, a societal norm, not just individuals. Sure, it applies to the individuals, but for the Hebrews, if you couldn't understand or trust the testimony of somebody, especially in a court of law, there was no law. And so we're talking about the betterment, and I think it's important. Both these authors made the point that in order for a society to be a good society, you have to trust testimony. You have to trust your neighbor, and so it's a bigger picture. In its original context, this word, or this commandment, was interpreted to focus on the integrity and truthfulness of the legal system in Israel's early life. God recognized that it would be impossible for the community to hold together without a bedrock of trust in the system of justice. If one lies in court, justice becomes impossible. Without justice, community becomes impossible. So, who is your neighbor?
Said the teacher of the law to Jesus.
What's that?
Said the teacher of the law to Jesus.
Yeah.
In that context, it is your own community and the courts that you describe. So your neighbor does not include, for example, the Philistines.
Right.
It includes your community.
The Jewish community.
The Jewish community.
Okay. else? Today, who's your neighbor?
You might want to
Could be a
find
big
one.
picture, just a big,
What?
big universal picture. Anyone,
Yeah.
anyone global.
It's everybody.
Right. But I just want to make that point because we think a neighbor is our next door neighbor. Well, that's true, but we're talking about, as Jesus said, who is your neighbor? Who is your brother?
Right,
Yes.
and therein lies the change from when the commandment was produced to when Jesus changed the definition.
Change the what?
The definition.
Yeah.
Of neighbor.
Right. Yeah. Change it. Jesus changed a lot of definitions, didn't he? Yeah. So. Okay. In the rules, extra attention is given to safeguard the poor in the justice system. Those who have no resources or ability to negotiate the legal system, widows, orphans, and immigrants, are singled out for special protection. Concern is expressed that their rights not be trampled by prejudice passed off as truth. What do they say in today's world? How good is your lawyer? I think we're still dealing with that. At least in this country, where I think we have tried to have a court-appointed lawyer and give people a fair shot. But okay, maybe they are represented well, and maybe they're not. The Bible makes clear that God will not acquit anyone who, through misleading statements and false charges, withholds justice from the poor. What does that mean in today's world? How do we withhold justice from the poor?
What do you think?
Huh?
What do you think?
I think one of the ways is substandard housing. Not enough of it. We're tearing down buildings in East Liberty to put up luxury high-rises and throwing 500 low-income people out. Is that the type of society we want?
It's the way we've always done it.
What's that?
It's the way we've always done it.
We have always done it, and because we're a capitalistic society.
Sure.
And you follow the money, go ahead.
And the fact that people don't have enough to eat and they're taking
Correct.
money away from
Correct.
programs that help people, yes.
Right. So, I can't tell you how many calls I've received in the last 6 months for help with utilities. You may be having a hard time paying your utility bill. They have gone up significantly in many ways. And so we try to help people from time to time through our Compassionate Care Fund. But so there's these larger justice issues and that we're dealing with. Obviously, today, one of the big talking points and flashpoints is immigration and immigrants. Are we treating them fairly? Are they getting their due process? I don't know. I'll let you figure that out. But it seems like it could be going better. Okay. Those who have no resources or ability to negotiate the legal system, I read that the Bible makes clear that God will not acquit anyone who withholds justice from the poor. Jim?
Would another way to pose that question, rather than what is withholding, what would justice for the poor look like?
Right. Right. It's interesting. Access to transportation. If somebody loses their car, can't afford a car, how do they get to work? They can't get to work, they lose their job. They lose their job, they're in big trouble. And so I think it's really interesting that I always thought of this as one-on-one, me and my neighbor. But we're talking about a much bigger societal issue here that is trying to establish a better society, and that's important. Language is powerful and a powerful manipulator. They, the biblical writers, understood that evil always relies on camouflage to spread. And I think that's doubly important in today's world where information is shared at lightning speed. I mean, we don't know what to believe sometimes. Heavenly bills.
Believe that.
Huh?
Believe that.
Yeah. So it is the ones who are vulnerable in particular that this word seeks to protect. Okay.
Hey Fred, how does this apply to small communities? I came from a town of 800 people.
It might be more important in my mind in a small community.
There were people like that, but they were taken care of
Right.
by everybody.
Right.
It's not like the big cities. I don't think they have the same real problem as the cities do.
In terms of volume, certainly not. But yeah, the church plays a role in a way, but I think it may be even more important in a small town. If your reputation gets besmirched, everybody knows about it. And it's hard to get over that if it's not true. Did you agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in a big city, with 1 million people, not everybody's going to hear that Dave Roth is a So
Whatever I did got to home before I could get there.
keeping a person's reputation intact was crucial in Israel's social and moral life. To lose one's reputation had both economic and religious ramifications. Because the social order was structured on a shame-honor continuum, the slightest hint of scandal could be dire. The rabbis recognized how difficult it was to recover from wrongfully injurious testimony or innuendo. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? It's awful. It's awful. And you can, even if you go to court and win, there's still people that don't believe you. And so I think it's, you ever hear the word, my word is my bond? You know? That's kind of what we're talking about here. The bond between two people can be broken through false witness. Got a couple lawyers here. What's hearsay in a court of law?
Something said by somebody else that you're speaking for them as to what they had said?
Even if you were there and you say you heard them say that, that's still hearsay?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hearsay as to what they said. You can say
Right.
what you heard, but
Right.
you can't. It's not evidence from that person who is speaking.
Right. So hearsay is a big deal in a court of law. I mean, on the TV, they strike it because it's hearsay or whatever. But even if you hear something, you may not interpret that correctly. You may not know all the facts.
It's the old adage of you think you heard what I said, but what I
Correct.
said is not what you heard.
Right, right. And that goes on all the time. You know, just in our political speeches, anyway. So, a person's reputation is important. Many medieval Jewish philosopher Maimonides taught that this was so important that if a neighbor needed correction, it should always be done gently, in private, and only for the other's good. Reproof must be direct and never in public. If we cannot say it to a person's face, we cannot say it at all. Wow, in this world today, whew, we ought to be living by that mantra. With the emails and the texts, it's so easy to say stuff that you would not say to a person in one-on-one. And the other thing I like is that it should be done in private and only for the other's good. I mean, the Bible tells us to talk to a person. If they don't listen, bring another person and try to point out your perspective. So, this is hard though, isn't it? It's hard within the church.
Kids out there,
Yeah. They're having fun.
It's good to hear that while we're having this discussion. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously, because the way we behave as adults
Yeah.
has influence on them that we
Yeah.
are often unaware.
Yep.
And you know, they see us doing something, whether we think they see it or not.
Right.
Whatever that is okay,
Yep.
because we're in charge.
Yep.
And boy, when you get a little kid shaking his finger at you saying, "But that's what you do," well,
Yeah.
that's different. Why?
Yeah.
And they've got you dead to rights.
Yep. Well, as a parent, we've all been there, haven't we? And so, what kids learn what they live. So, he talks about false testimony or false witness like an arrow. Once you release an arrow, can you get it back? No. And you've heard the children's sermon about toothpaste. Once the toothpaste gets out of the tube, you know, if you say something nasty and it comes out of the tube, it doesn't go back in the tube very well. And so there's this comparison. An old Jewish teaching compares the tongue to an arrow. Why not another weapon, a sword, for example, one rabbi asked. Well, because he said, if a man unsheathes his sword to kill his friend, and his family pleads with him and begs for mercy, the man may be mollified and return to the sword to its scabbard, but an arrow, once it is shot, cannot be returned. Words that wound are forbidden by the 9th word, even if they are perfectly true. The words may be true, but they are designed to lower a person's esteem and to elevate the speakers. I don't even think we realize that, but from time to time, that's true. And we want to be right. So, before you say it, think about it. Right? I constantly am challenging myself in emails. Would I say that to a person's face? You know? And try to understand the harm that could be done if they misunderstand. There are a number of exceptions in Scripture in the obligation to truth telling. It is permissible to lie to save a life, to make peace, to avoid injury, to maintain modesty, to protect a person from being taken advantage of, or to keep harmony in a family. Sometimes God instructs a lie. When God instructs the prophet Samuel to anoint King David over Saul, who is suffering from dementia, the prophet is afraid to do it, lest Saul hear about it and kill him. God instructs him to lie to Saul and even give him the words to say to save his life. 1 Samuel 16. Then, a general rule of thumb for a lie is to be justified. It must never be told for the benefit of the liar, but rather always to preserve the life and dignity of one who is more vulnerable. Yeah, Steve's going, what? What?
It's a real fine line.
There is a very, very fine line.
Sure. And you only find that line after you've crossed it.
We only find that line after we crossed it. Yeah, well,
What I have found in most cases, if you think hard enough, you can say what needs to be said without lying. But it takes effort.
okay. Can you give an example? Well, think about it. If you think of an example.
I can think of an example the other way. My mom fell and she went in the hospital, and the hospital calls me up and they go, you know, your mom was here a couple years ago and she has dementia. She has really no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I go over there almost every day and do her pills and things like that. And they said, you need to get her into Asbury. So I told my mom her apartment caught on fire and I had to move her to Asbury. I hated to do it, but to try to go into some long explanation that you have Alzheimer's and all of this, I just said, your place caught on fire, and I felt bad about it, but that's, I don't know. I don't know if it was a good lie or not, but.
Yeah. It's tough. Yeah.
Well, apparently that bothered you, Steve.
Yeah, because I don't want to lie. You know, you don't want to willfully lie, you know, and so, especially to your parents.
I'd rather just take my knocks and just say it.
Yeah.
There'd be something wrong with you if it didn't bother you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're a pathological liar.
Well, yeah. we did this with my granddad. He was living with us and he had a car in a rented garage down the street.
Yeah.
And we saw, man, he had parked that car all up, and he really shouldn't have been driving.
Right.
And we hid his keys.
Right.
And he said, anybody seen my keys?
Uh-oh.
And the answer was, well, not lately,
Right.
which was
Partially true.
well, and after about 2 weeks, Grandpa says, well, if you find those keys, you might as well sell the thing. I'm not going to be driving anymore.
There you go.
So,
He came to the realization.
yeah, and, you know, whether we never did know whether he figured it out or not, but it calmed our senses to know that he came around to making the decision by himself. But, you know, we try to protect his, say, Grandpa, you can't drive anymore.
Right.
You know, that wouldn't have gotten anywhere.
Not exactly right. You can't, yeah.
I can think of a way what Walt was saying, that if you think hard enough, you won't have to lie. And it's a silly example, but let's say I'm shopping with my adult daughter and I say, what do you think of this dress? Okay, so she doesn't want to say, oh, that's cute, because that would be a lie. And she doesn't want to say, that's ugly. So she'd say, she'll think about, what can I say? It's right. And she'll say, you can do better.
What did she say?
You can do better.
Okay. Well, he is.
So she had to put some thought into not lying, but she didn't want me to buy it.
Right. Well, one of these authors uses the thing. When your wife tries on a new dress and said, "Does this make me look fat?"
Oh, yeah.
You
There's
can
no
do
right
better.
answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say you can do better.
You can do better. I like that. Everybody got that? Put that in your playback tape. The issue at heart of these positions is that when we make excuses for our lies, we can become accustomed to them to such an extent that they become habitual, and we can no longer tell the difference between truth and falsehood. When I had my foster daughter, she told so many lies, and then she realized she would trip herself up. And she would, oh, wait a minute, that goes, because I said, well, you just said that you were going there, and now you're not. Yeah, and it got difficult for her to manage her lies. So she eventually came around to saying, you know what, it's a whole lot easier to tell the truth. So the word genuine in Greek means not hypocritical, counterfeit, or showy. Everything that can be expressed should not in every case be expressed. I'm trying to tell my son that. He's been married 5 years. And he thinks he needs to be right on every darn issue. And he drives his wife crazy. And I said, Justin, everything that you think doesn't need to be expressed. She may have a different opinion. She may disagree with you, and that's okay. You know, it doesn't have to be your way or the highway. So it's very interesting. He's slowly getting around to that.
There's the rub.
What's that?
Where everything is so competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, every other TV show now is a battle or a war, whether it's kids baking or what. We have to be right.
Yeah.
And I try to, when I used to do marriage counseling, I'd say, look, you know, you've got to let the other person win.
Yep.
I've known people that, my gosh, they'd win every argument even when they were wrong. And they couldn't say those words, you know, you could be right. Because the means, well, that means I was wrong.
Yeah.
And that's something that is just very hard for most of us to face up, that I really thought this was the way it was.
Right.
And I was wrong.
Right. Well, we all think our sense of reality is the correct one.
Yeah, how do we counter that? How do we
I think with graciousness, like you said, you may be right. You may be right. Beth, did you?
There's an acronym that is helpful for me in recovery circles. It's WAIT, why am I talking? And if I can just think of that for 2 seconds, it helps.
Right. Yeah, we can tangle ourselves up in our words really easily. I read somewhere, I heard somewhere, Mary Thompson, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
You know, if you get bruises enough, you won't say things.
What's that?
If you get enough bruises, you won't say anything.
So-
Right or wrong.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, you can be right and have a terrible relationship, you know, a miserable life. Matter of fact, I think if you have to be right all the time, something's not right. Silence
Somebody will
is...
tell her, you can do better.
Oh boy.
Then she'll look you right in the eye and say, you're right.
Well, Nadine told me to say that. May I have Nadine's number, please? So he says, while silence is often the best path, if to speak what is really in our hearts would wound another or make us into hypocrites. Even silence can be false witness and can do harm. I was like, you all know Jeff Wank, right? Jeff has a hard time being silent. And he tells people the way it is. And we were talking, I said, if somebody is about to do something that's going to be harmful to themselves or somebody else, if you don't speak up, I think that's wrong. Even if in your mind you're not 100% sure, but if somebody's about to do this or that, I gave the example a couple weeks ago about my next door neighbor coming over to rang my doorbell one day and said, "I'm leaving my wife." And he expected me to just say, "Oh, okay." I said, "I don't think that's a good idea. You got 2 high schoolers." And anyway, I had to stand my ground just to say it from my opinion. And then he went into this big diatribe and all that stuff. But okay, so a part of the problem is that in our time, lying is commonplace and even normalized to keep or to gain power. We have this battle of the media in America today. We don't really know what to believe. You got one side saying one thing and one side saying another, and it's really hard to figure it out. And then you got all these podcasts, these experts, you know? And it's like, well, can I really trust what this person is saying? I mean, do they have any education in this background or background education? So I think it's even harder with the volume of information coming at us. Imagine if you know, 50 years ago, if you lived on a farm, you're out in the fields working all day, you didn't have any of that. So it says, even a cursory reading of history tells us that any ideological or fear-based system will eventually distort reality and resist transformation. Fear-based system. And then he gets into a couple of key issues, one of which is white supremacy. As a white person, I don't like that. I don't think I'm prejudiced. But I can't deny that it doesn't happen. In housing, in job selection, many different ways. We whites controlled the thing for many years. And it's hard to give up power to equalize the playing field. So, even talking about the system and its evils is mediated through the lens of lies that we do or we do not want to see. He uses this example that we kind of talked about, telling a child, well, take a pillow and open it up and throw those feathers up and see where they go. So the child throws the feathers up and they go everywhere. And then he says, okay, go pick all of them up again. Put them back in there. That's kind of what we're talking about here. You know, how do you get that back? How do you get a reputation back? It's pretty hard. So it's better to A, do it in private, or B, be silent. Do it the right way. And I think within the church, we have a lot to learn. We just went through a season that was difficult. And I think we're learning. We don't want to go there again. And so this is really important. We're talking about the greater good of the community. When Karen tells a lie about Karen or somebody else, it's out there. So we need to think twice. And you know where it happens most in the church? Up in the parking lot after the session meeting or the deacons meeting. If you're up there saying what you should have said in the session meeting, something is wrong. You do not feel the freedom or the right to have said that in the session meeting. And it takes a really good leader to pull the truth out of people. And it's usually the people that aren't saying anything that I like to say, well, what do you think, Judy? And then you get this words of wisdom. That's the beauty of AA. Everybody talks about it. Everybody, you have to listen to their story. And they say, take what you like and leave the rest. That's exactly right. You may agree with some person, but not that person. It's the same in the church. You know, we're not all going to agree. My goodness, why do we think we're all going to agree on every issue? We're not.
Wouldn't it be dull?
Huh?
Wouldn't it be dull?
If we didn't have differences,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think about our men's Bible study, Jesus and Joe. We bicker all the time. We don't want different. Yeah, Beth.
But that's because that's a safe environment.
I'm sorry?
That's because it's a safe environment.
That's
and
correct.
if you don't feel safe,
That's
you know,
correct.
to disagree because that could make you vulnerable, you're not gonna say anything.
That is absolutely correct. It's a safe environment. And we know in AA or in Jesus and Joe that people aren't going to run out and say, oh, did you know what Dave Ross said? Oh my gosh. So it does. In a bigger community like the church, it's even harder. But I think that's a part of the cooperative leadership that we've seen. Doug's style of leadership, Kathy's style of leadership is cooperative and understanding and knows that Karen's going to be. I had two Stephen ministers, and I'm looking at Karen, I won't, who diametrically. Whoa! Strike that. Quarter. Strike that.
Put it back in the.
Diametrically,
Unring that bell.
were opposed on a social issue. But I knew they loved each other. And they cared for each other. And they took care of each other. And they said it's okay that we don't agree. We got to get there somehow, some way. So we're running out of time, and I don't want to miss any of what's going to happen. The early interpreters of the Ten Commandments understood that to spread lies that humiliate is just like killing a person. I don't know, you hear it all the time. These young people are defamed on the internet, and they kill themselves. I mean, this is real, folks. Girls are humiliated by their body shape. Are you kidding me? Boys are said that they're this or they're that. So, to speak the truth in a context in which those with power in our lives are deeply invested in the lies is dangerous business. Retaliation against whistleblowers, the arrest of peaceful protesters, firing and threatening organizers for fair working conditions are a few examples of the cost of speaking the truth. Do you remember Enron? Do you remember that? You remember that it was a female mid-level accountant, I think, that said, I can't live with this. We're cooking the books. And she was pilloried by the upper management. And they all thought, oh, she's, you can't trust her. She's a mid-level. Guess who was right? She was right. She got, and you can think of many other, standing up for what is right is really dicey business. The early church fathers and mothers understood deceit to be a major block to spiritual living, sometimes called vanity or vainglory. Deceit is a cardinal vice. Satan is called the father of the lies in the Gospel of John for that reason. He not only lies, it has become his identity. That happens to us too. We start lying, it becomes our identity. Then we got to lie on top of the lie. Then we got to remember what the lie was. It's hard, dangerous path. It's really best, even when it's hard. And you know who it's hardest with? Your family. Isn't it interesting? You'll sit down next to somebody on an airplane, and they'll spill their whole guts out to you. I'm going through a divorce, and I don't really want to know about your divorce. But we'll tell a complete stranger all of our details. But to tell our loved ones it is very, very hard. Lies require a great deal of maintenance. The first casualty in the life of lies is our freedom. Second is our sense of self. I bet you all felt like after you told a lie, and then you just felt dirty for a little bit, didn't you? Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I don't want to do that again. I mean, I think that's our conscience. That's God reminding us that the truth is always best. And how we tell the truth is even better. The way we live our truth, no matter what we say, is most important. The ninth word invites us to be true to our deepest selves and our values. St. Anthony of the Desert, an early Christian mystic, went into the wilderness in order to live a more authentic life than he felt he could by surrounded by the world's flurry and temptation. He taught that in order to love God, one must learn to love one's own soul, essence, self. He believed that to love God, we had to also love God's image in ourselves, just as God made us. To do that, we have to find a way to see and speak truth to ourselves. Who do we lie to the most? You know, it's hard to tell the truth. Unraveling the lies we tell ourselves about ourselves is spiritual work. That's what they do in AA and Al-Anon. Your parents may have told you you're nothing. You're a loser. You'll never amount to anything. And you believed it. It's a lie. My father, we used to have autograph books. Did anybody have an autograph book growing up? Where you would have people write stuff in there? My father wrote, and I'm going to question, to thine own self be true. You know who wrote that? Shakespeare. And then it goes on, because if you don't lie to yourself, then you can't lie to other people. That's good advice. To thine own self be true. It's hard. It's really hard. But that's what we're talking about here. Only when we take the log out of our own eye and begin the journey of seeing ourselves, our values, and organizing our lives consistently around those truths, we can be trusted to see clearly. In the Old Testament, integrity is spoken of as righteousness, and Doug said right living. I like that. Right living, or righteousness. It means to do the good thing, to do the God thing in every circumstance. The New Testament writers use words like faithfulness and purity of heart to talk about the way of life into which the ninth commandment invites us. It will not be long before our words become our actions and we become strangers even to ourselves. Okay, tough stuff, but good stuff. Last comments or questions? Words that bless can heal even the deepest wounds over time. Truth heals those who honestly want it and who are willing to turn from the lies to lives of integrity and purity of heart. I don't want this to be all about me, but when we had our foster daughter, she had been told lie after lie after lie by her parents. And it took her about 10 years to understand those weren't true. And eventually her mother came to her and apologized. She had gotten into recovery. She was making amends. And today she knows that those were lies. And she has a daughter now. And she's not going to tell her daughter lies. It takes time. But words do heal as well as hurt. So I would invite you to be healers, not hurters. Okay, we need to head on to a really, really fun. Do you realize who's coming back? It's going to be great. Let's get in there and celebrate, all right? All right, let's end with a prayer. Lord, sometimes we don't even know that we're lying, but help us to be righteous, to have right living, and to know that it is for the betterment of not only of ourselves, but our family, our community, our church, our nation, our world. Help us not to bear false witness against our neighbor. For we pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Fred. No class next week, June 1st is when we're back.
Class next week.